And then the three-judge panel also required a new parole determination process to allow nonviolent second strikers to be eligible for parole once they've completed half their sentence. So how's that coming?
So I would put that in the category of the stages of development. The teams have got together. The Board of Parole Hearings has been spearheading that particular process. The eligible inmate population then being identified, and then a lot of discussion about the application of 50% and what that means. There's some internal debate and discussions about how you would actually apply that. And then the actual touching of files. We are now reading files to see exactly the extent of this particular population. I think the members will remember or appreciate the reason we went into this direction was the concern over one of the categories of increase in our population was the nonviolent second striker population. It's a condition that we are facing. Not sure necessarily of the cause. We all have some theories that haven't borne out yet. But this is our attempt to try and address that condition when you talk about long-term solutions and sustainability that are not capacity. This is certainly one of those that are in that category.
Right. Do we have an estimate of how many people may be affected by this?
We are targeting, well, we have an eligible pool that we think, and again, I'm referencing, I have so many numbers in my head, but we started with about 7,500 people that we thought were potentially in this particular category. But we have not gone through now and screened out certain folks. In this process, we were exempting, of course, life without the possibility of parole in certain populations at the end of the day. So it's something that I think we're going to have to continue to develop. We're going to have to continue to report to the committee and other parties in terms of our progress.
Do you have a time frame?
We expected that the first results of this, I believe, are going to be next year in 2015. And so the scoring of any results and assumptions we were making, owing to the fact that we had to have time to actually develop a parole determination process, and what that would look like would be where you would actually see the results of people coming out through this process, maybe in the year 2015, February 2015, with some specificity.
That's too long.
This
is what the three-judge panel requires us to do so that we get the population down. And it's one of the reasons, as you know, there have been the accountability problems over the years for the institution. We're all gone in 2015, or lots of people are. How do we actually make sure that we implement a new parole determination process based on the judge's order?
So we have a requirement to report monthly to the court, and I don't know if the members know that, but that's a report that also could be made available to you all, which will document our progress toward that particular objective. I will offer you an explanation that is not an excuse, but I think it is very important for us to actually know and identify the types of people we're talking about so that we can decide what a parole determination process is. If these cases are not as complicated as some of us believe they are, a process might be as simple as an administrative review and determination of it. But if they're very complicated, then it's maybe a process that is more akin to what we realize and know as a formal parole hearing process, which I think is a very complicated and lengthy and can be expensive process. So I think it behooves us to take the time and diligence to figure this out. And so even though it may be sooner, Senator, than February 2015, for the purposes of reporting to the three-judge court, we have been, I hope, understandably conservative in all of our estimates for fear that we would actually over-report, over-project, and then miss the targets along the way.
Does the problem come with the definition of nonviolent?
No, I don't think there's a definitional issue per se.
Do the complications come, for instance, if they're in solitary confinement and we don't want to release them directly to the street? Can you comment on?
I think the complication is that the application of charging is different out there, and so we actually want to see the files because now we have a fair amount of discretion. When we've now got the opportunity and ability to look at these, we might be able to see a fact pattern ourselves and render a different professional opinion about the seriousness or of the particular matter and assess some level of risk ourselves and make a determination on whether this person should be released from prison and onto parole.
Okay, what about the parole of inmates with indeterminate sentences who've already been granted parole by the board but have future parole dates? Are you looking at that
That's
too?
a subject that is very esoteric and complicated. I would actually have to defer to the Board of Parole to give you some answers on that.
Do you have any idea what the numbers are?
I think at present count, we were about 50 to 55 in range that are in that category today.
Okay. And then what about the expanded parole for medically incapacitated inmates or people who are over 60 and have served 25 years?
Again, those are the two that I would describe in the category of doing and in development. The teams have been meeting with the Federal Receiver's Office to identify eligible populations that fit the new expanded criteria.
Okay. I know that after the legislature passed the law, it took a number of years to find even 25 eligible people. Do you think we'll be able to work more quickly now that there has been experience with the law that's been in effect for a while?
It should go a little bit quicker. I think the process is the same by and large, that's going to be a parole hearing process. So we didn't pick up any speed in terms of the mechanics of it, but it's a matter of refreshing maybe folks that have been previously determined unsuitable under the prior criteria because there's a broadening of that category. At the same time, in the number of years, whether that population is still with us is uncertain, but it should move a little bit quicker than I think the frame of reference that we all have about the first medical parole program.
Okay, so when do we think that we'll be able to really launch into doing
Again, I think
that?
we conservatively set results for the second benchmark, February 2015. Doesn't mean that, again, we won't be having things going before that.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know if you wanted to comment on anything else.
If I could, I just wanted to reiterate the points that I think the members are making, as well as the Department of Finance, that sure, we have geared toward the capacity pieces of this, but I don't want us as California to think that the 2-year extension really gives us an opportunity to breathe. I was with the probation chiefs yesterday, and I know you were, and part of the point that I wanted to make to everybody is that we have to start digging into this stuff now, because everybody is right to point out the notion of durability and sustainability. And the other things that we were talking about, that we just talked about, as well as other things that we're conversed before now in the end of this budget season, is those are things that are going to take more time, including sentencing. We don't really get results until afterwards. So the more we can do now, the better off we're going to be. And so I appreciate the fact that the committee is really focusing on decisions now that have an impact years from now.
Thank you. I did actually want to rather urgently ask you what you're doing about the court's order to expanded alternative custody for female inmates. I'm very disturbed about the fact that we have unfilled slots, many, 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 in the very few existing alternative custody programs that we have.
So I know we wanted to talk about this later, so maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of it, but we have on the brink within a couple of weeks, I believe we'll finish up a contract with a McFarland facility that is really being designed as a female reentry facility that will house approximately 260 female inmates. Then we also have for enhanced ACP itself for female inmates a facility in San Diego that we are planning to retrofit that we think will actually be available as early as July and perhaps August of this year, and has the capacity to house 50 to 80 female inmates and would be the first phase of an enhanced alternative custody program. We're in conversations probably every other day with folks, taking offers, proposals from different communities. I believe Assemblymember Joan Sawyer has expressed some interest, and so we are hoping to get down into his community to see what is available there. And part of it is I think that we've kind of suggested in this budget, if there were $40 million or some amount of money for reentry or enhanced alternative custody programs out there, what would the level of interest be in the communities out there? And so this is why we have a little departure with the Legislative Analyst's Office in that we think some of the conditions have changed since 2007. We are now post-realignment. After realignment, there have been a lot of changes in the criminal justice system. And so we have been hearing that there is interest and appetite out there. San Francisco, we have just finished, I think, inking the deal with them on the first pilot reentry. Marin County, we are told, is coming around the corner behind them. But it's been tough, largely because we think maybe we still didn't get the model or criteria right. That's only a 60-day program. And if we change the criteria to 4 to 6 months or 9 months or whatever it is that we can agree upon is a good effort to launch a new pilot, we have a deep interest in doing that, and we hope that that will make some difference.
So have you finished the recalibration of how you would deem a female inmate eligible? That's been done so we could fill the slots in the existing programs?
Yes, so the bottom line for us is that there was an exclusion in ACP that did not permit us to place serious and violent females into those programs. And so via the court order, that section has been waived. Because what we had learned as we were applying it, we had trouble filling it, we did realignment, and so many of the folks that would qualify are no longer with us. And so we began to touch files, look at files, review inmates, meet inmates, and it was our professional judgment that we could, if we were given the ability to now change the criteria to include certain serious and violent women, again, using some discretion and judgment in looking at these offenders, that they would be suitable for placement in an alternative custody program.
Okay.
And that's why we sought that authority.
Yes. So, okay, that's good. I'm very encouraged by that. Have CDCR looked at some kind of state-county partnerships for counties that are interested?
Yes. In fact, that was part of me yesterday trying to implore the county probations as well as talking to everybody. There are some cities and some counties that have reached out that have expressed an interest in this. Again, we're trying to be very open about what a reentry model would look like. We have a proposed version or concept per se of what it is, but we're very open to any discussion that either any county, any private provider, any city, that any jurisdiction has an interest in. It's one of, again, in a after realignment post AB 109 world, the relationship between state and locals has changed dramatically, and we think that maybe now is the time to again talk about reentry as an alternative in California.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from members of the committee?
Thank you very much. First of all, I'll be here past 15. I'll be here to 2022, so you don't have to worry. You won't be by yourself.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I'd like to back up a little bit, really to talk to you more about kind of the department's philosophy around the credits, not to the point where, how many can be released based on it, but just your philosophy. Based on, for example, LAL talked about the milestone credit, and it's my understanding the department made a decision a couple of years ago to exclude college courses from earning milestone credits. I see somebody shaking their head no. Is that not correct? So currently, college courses can help you earn milestone credits?
Roger Meyer, Deputy Director of the Division of Rehabilitative Programs. College courses, completion of college courses do earn milestone credits.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And so we've heard that currently 6 weeks is the max an inmate can earn in credit during a 12-month calendar period. Have you evaluated at all the efficacy of extending the cap? Has any consideration been given to that?
No, we have not looked at extending the cap. What we are currently working on with milestone credits are looking at the programs that are eligible to earn milestone credits and expansion of some of those programs that may be eligible.
Okay, but nothing around considering the 6-week max? You're firm there for now?
As of this time, no.
Okay. Is there any federal prohibition or any discussion around whether or not banked credits could be allowed to apply to time on parole as well?
I'm not familiar with that.
Well, okay, so let me reframe the question so everybody's clear. Currently, you can't use bank credits to apply to your parole time. Your credits can only be used for your time incarcerated, currently.
Yes and no.
Okay.
If by chance we, based on credits you have earned and you are overdue for release, that time that you spent in prison can be used to reduce your discharge date.
Okay, so it can happen. Okay. Okay, thank you for the clarification on both those.
You didn't have any other questions?
That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Anderson? Yeah, I'd like to direct the LAO to work with the Department of Finance, CDCR, and I suggest the Pew Charitable Trust, who have done this work in about 15 other states, to develop a cost estimate for an independent comprehensive evaluation of CDCR's rehabilitation programs and to report back. That's one of the recommendations that you made. We need to know what that would cost. I'm also very interested because I don't want to interrupt the development of new programs while we have an evaluation of just getting a sense of how that would work in, because I think that CDCR is looking at some very new and innovative things, and I don't want them to be pushed off course by a need to evaluate what there is, which may be obsolete pretty soon. So since you recommended it, if you could be in touch with those people and make some recommendations to us.
We'd be happy to do that. We've been having that conversation internally, Director Tidwell, myself, and our Director of Research, so we'd be happy to report back.
Right. Well, we had a very interesting presentation a month or so ago from the Pew Charitable Trust, which has a program called Results First. And they've really worked on this in other states, and they have a way of evaluating programs that tell you, number one, does it work? And number two, is it cost effective? So that if you have limited amounts of money and you need to make policy choices, the legislature and the administration and the department would have be playing with a full deck, so to speak. But also, I am wondering if the LAO would have any specific suggestions that you could give us in writing about how you would recommend expanding SB 678 with the new population. Because, of course, what we're being told is it's a different ballgame, different population. And again, I don't know if the department or finance have done any thinking about that.
Yes, we have also just recently received the data that LAO referred to from the Administrative Office of the Courts and are looking at ways to see what can be done with SB 678 post-realignment.
Okay. And, you know, if we can have these by the May revise, these are the kinds of things I think we'd want to be looking at. Also, to follow up on some of Senator Mitchell's comments, why we couldn't lift the cap on credits or increase milestone credits. Because if we could get completion of some of these programs, we would be sending people back to the community much better equipped to find jobs and, what are we saying, less re-victimization. So I'd like to see us do that by the May revise.
Madam
Senator
Chair,
Anderson?
when you were speaking of the expansion of SB 678, in their assessment, could they also look at the pros and cons of alternative terms and the impact on public safety and victims' rights? If we could include that, do you need a motion to do this, or can we just do it by asking for it?
Well, that's a good question. Would you like a motion?
Well, I'd be happy to present the motion with that one little clause included in the assessment.
Okay, that might be a larger subject matter, because do you count the victims? If you don't have recidivism, you don't have re-victimization, right?
Right, but I'm just looking at the quick assessment of the pros and cons. I'm not looking for them to go through each and every one of them. I'm just looking for the broad view.
For a quick assessment?
Right.
Okay, sure.
The motion.
Okay. Senator Anderson has made the motion. Are you? No? Oh,
Madam Chair,
aye.
Senator Anderson,
Aye.
Senator Mitchell,
Aye.
motion passes.
Okay. So that concludes that part of the agenda. Thank you all very much. I think this is setting the stage for us to try to make some wise decisions in the next couple of months.
Well, we're sort of, so I think we're still here. I think you're done.
So now we're going to consider some of the BCPs the department has put forward. And the first one is the recidivism BCP.
The recidivism reduction BCP had 4 components. The first cell addresses the $40 million for reentry programs. The $40 million is intended to fund both reentry programs or reintegration programs in the community, as well as an expansion of the reentry jail beds model that we have had. So for the community reintegration program, I can provide some further details. This is intended to really be a secure facility that is provided through a contracted provider that provides housing, primarily housing, employment, and continuing substance abuse disorder treatment. We anticipate that inmates would be placed in these beds 4 to 6 months prior to release. And in order to get this program up and running in a reasonable time frame, we thought it would be best to exclude certain offenders from the program. Those included sex registrants, life-term inmates, and those with a high risk to recidivate. We also excluded fire camp inmates from these beds because they are basically already in a very successful program that is working very well and shows to have good outcomes in terms of reduced recidivism. So the way we came to the estimate for 500 beds was to look at inmates being released over a 16-month period. We looked at releases by county because the idea is that these inmates would be housed into the community that they are ultimately going to reside in. So by looking at releases by month by county and excluding certain inmates, we believe that we could support an average daily population of about 350 inmates in 4 Southern California reintegration programs and 150 average daily population in 2 Northern California reintegration programs. And then based on sort of how that model goes, it could be expanded to additional counties and or inmates. The other component of that is the reentry jail beds, and there is trailer bill associated with this BCP to expand to 60 days to up to a year, so that jails could take inmates prior to release up to a year, specifically for providing reentry services with some of the providers that they would be then connected with upon release. I would note that this $40 million we estimate would probably fund about 1,000 beds based on the cost of providing beds to parolee residential treatment beds currently. However, in terms of our 3JP POP chart, we wanted to be conservative in all of our population estimates to make sure we achieve that benchmark, and that's why there's that disconnect between sort of a $40 million funding 1,000 beds and having 500 on the population benchmark chart. The second component I'm going to speak to is the $1.1 million general fund for case records overtime for processing and enhanced credit earnings for nonviolent second strikers. We have 24,000 nonviolent second strikers currently in CDCR, and the case records technicians are going to spend a lot of time doing audits of those recalculations of the sentences to make sure that inmates are being released at the appropriate time, given the increase to 33 1/3% credit earnings. And that requires an audit in each and every record to make sure that all the information is correct and the inmate is released on time.
Clint Kellum, Department of Finance. The third component is $11.3 million to expand the integrated services for mentally ill parolees from 600 beds to 900 slots. The program is focused on providing wraparound services for parolees with significant mental health issues, and the department in their research has shown that it has been effective in reducing recidivism. Then the final component is $6 million, kind of a placeholder amount related to some of the discussion earlier around accelerating the parole hearing process, expanding medical parole, implementing elderly parole, and as some of these issues are being worked out, there'll be an update at the May revision on the additional details and what it will take as far as details to run the programs and the cost to do so.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'll be brief. Finance has done a good job covering it. On the integrated services for mentally ill parolees, just a couple things to point out. Number one, this program has been around for a long time. It actually existed in a previous form as the integrated services for homeless and mentally ill as created by AB 34 and AB 2034. So the program has a long history, more than 10 years, and it was revamped to focus specifically on parolees because that's what created the nexus for saving dollars, saving general fund dollars specifically. So there was a long history of showing the effectiveness of that program. We're currently working on improving our efforts to enroll inmates pre-release in Medi-Cal. And one of the things that we're looking at is the future opportunities under the Affordable Care Act to take better use of federal funds for this program as well. So in addition to its long history and its proven track record of being effective, we think that there's some future opportunities as well as we get folks eligible. The only other piece that I'd point out is as we talk about the additional $6 million for the hearings and the 1.1 for the credit earnings, just making a distinction to make sure we're all clear. The 1.1 million is really for credit earnings, applying a set of rules to a set of facts. The 6 million, as I alluded to earlier, was our placeholder in the January budget for all of those individual reviews that will have to be done, that will be time intensive for the changes for the second strike population, the medical and the elderly. My colleagues from the parole ISMIT program and from the Board of Parole Hearings are here if you have any specific questions.
Okay, Leo, do you want to just run through again? Any comments?
Yeah, I think we covered our proposals relatively quickly. Sarah Larson, LAO. So if you have any additional questions for us, we'd be happy to answer those.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Clarification on to finance, your description on how the $40 million would be spent. You mentioned for a total of 6 counties, 4 Southern Cal counties, 2 Northern Cal counties. Do those include the 4 counties that were in the pilot last year? Is it going to be 6 new counties? Who are the 6 and how will they be selected?
The 6 counties were selected based on the number of inmates being released. So
Okay.
it's your major metropolitan counties.
So
that
it would include the 4 that were in the pilot, San Diego, LA, Marin, San Francisco?
LA and San Diego were in that, and then there was one in like a Bay Area, sort of a number of Bay Area counties, because they're sort of all closely related, to sort of combine the population.
So could we have a situation where the counties that were in the pilot now that haven't fully implemented the program from 13, whatever the last budget cycle was, last year, right? So you've got 4 counties in the pilot. My
Sure.
home county of LA and San Francisco County, as I understand it, have not fully implemented the program yet. So am I understanding you correctly to suggest that some or one of those 4 counties would not be included in this new expanded program, and so they may have received dollars last year and they won't receive continued funding?
So I will, the dollars that were provided last year were actually sort of carved out of anticipated savings in the
Right.
Division of Rehabilitative Programming's item.
Okay.
That's not really ongoing funding that is available. We don't anticipate that funding to continue to be available in their budget. So it's not that this would really sort of be able to allow those 4 counties to continue and then also look for additional opportunities as well.
Interesting. And the counties were identified just based on sheer numbers, the numbers counties who are willing to
Right.
reentry
So we are definitely open to hearing from counties in terms of what they think an appropriate cost for such a program would be and what kind of services they would be willing to provide. But in terms of the community reintegration programs, in order to sustain something like that ongoing, you need a certain population size to be constantly sort of going out to the county.
Right.
You wouldn't want to have a 50-person facility and only be able to keep 10 inmates in there at a time.
Agreed.
So that was why we looked at bigger counties.
So you said toward the end of your presentation that was a total of about 1,000 beds?
Yes.
Is how you arrived at the $40 million figure. And so those are all community-based beds?
It's both. It's both. We haven't specified sort of how many we think might be jail or how many we think might be in the community. We want our county partners and our community provider partners to sort of come to us with what they might have available for this funding.
And so will you know that by May revise, or that will be post-May revise?
The department has sort of been working more closely with these people. I know some people have come forward with, I don't know.
Okay. And I ask that because I think that will have strong bearing on potentially our ability to support it, because what I hear loud and clear from my community, I co-hosted with Congresswoman Bass and Assemblyman Jones Sawyer a town hall this past Saturday in our shared territory of our districts on reentry, and we were overwhelmed by 500 plus participants, all of whom are singing from the same songbook, wanting community-based reentry services. So I think having a sense of what proportion of those beds will be community-based versus in jails will be very important for me to know the degree to which we can support the administration's proposal or not. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.